Fairest ladies, there be many men and women foolish enough to believe that, when as the white fillet is bound about a girl's head, and the black cowl clapped upon her back, she is no longer a woman, and is no longer sensible of feminine appetites, as if the making her a nun had changed her to stone. And if perchance they hear aught contrary to this their belief, they are as much incensed as if a very great and heinous misdeed had been committed against nature, considering not neither having regard to themselves, whom full license to do that which they will availeth not to sate, nor yet to the much potency of idlesse and thought-taking. On like wise, there are but too many who believe that spade and mattock, and coarse victuals, and hard living do altogether purge away carnal appetites for the tillers of the earth, and render them exceeding dull of wit and judgment. But how much all who believe thus are deluded, I purpose, since the Queen hath commanded it to me, to make plain to you in a little story, without departing from the theme I her appointed. There was, and is yet, in these our parts a convent of women, very famous for sanctity, the which, that I may not anywise abate its repute, I will not name, wherein no great while agone, there being there no more than 8 nuns, and an abbess, all young, in the nunnery, a poor silly dolt of a fellow was gardener of a very goodly garden of theirs, who, being miscontent with his wage, settled his accounts with the lady's bailiff, and returned to Lamporecchio, whence he came. There, amongst others who welcomed him home, was a young labouring man, stout and robust, and for a countryman, a well-favoured fellow, by name of Masetto, who asked him where he had been so long. The good man, whose name was Nuto, told him, whereupon Masetto asked him in what he had served the convent, and he, I tended a great and goodly garden of theirs, and moreover I went while to the coppice for sticks, and drew water, and did other such small matters of service, but the nuns gave me so little wage, that I could scare find me in shoon withal. Besides, they are all young, and methinketh they are possessed of the devil, for there was no doing anything to their liking. Nay, when I was at work whiles in the courtyard, quoth one, set this here, and another, set that here, and a third snatched the spade from my hand, saying, that is naught. Brief, they gave me so much vexation that I would leave work be and begone out of the courtyard, insomuch that, what with one thing and what with another, I would abide there no longer and took myself off. When I came away, their bailiff besought me, and I could lay my hand on any one apt unto that service, to send the man to him, and I promised it him. But may God make him sound of the loins as he whom I shall get him, else will I send him none at all. Masetto, hearing this, was taken with so great a desire to be with these nuns, that he was all consumed therewith, judging from Nuto's words that he might avail to compass somewhat of that which he desired. However, foreseeing that he would fail of his purpose, if he discovered aught thereof to Nuto, he said to the latter, Egad, thou didst well to come away. How is a man to live with women? He were better abide with devils. 6 times out of 7 they know not what they would have themselves. But after they had made an end of their talk, Masetto began to cast about what means he should take to be with them, and feeling himself well able to do the offices of which Nuto had spoken, he had no fear of being refused on that head, but misdoubted him he might not be received, for that he was young and well looked. Wherefore, after pondering many things in himself, he bethought himself thus, the place is far hence, and none knoweth me there, and I can but make a show of being dumb. I shall for certain be received there. Having fixed upon this device, he set out with an axe he had about his neck, without telling any whither he was bound, and betook himself in the guise of a beggarman to the convent, where being come, he entered in, and as luck would have it, found the bailiff in the courtyard. Him he accosted with signs such as dumb folk use, and made a show of asking food of him for the love of God, and that in return he would, and it were needed, cleave wood for him. The bailiff willingly gave him to eat, and after set before him divers logs that Nuto had not availed to cleave, but of all which Masetto, who was very strong, made a speedy dispatch. By and by the bailiff, having occasion to go to the coppice, carried him thither and put him to cutting logs, after which, setting the ass before him, he gave him to understand by signs that he was to bring them home. This he did very well, wherefore the bailiff kept him there some days, so he might have him do certain things for which he had occasion. One day it chanced that the abbess saw him, and asked the bailiff whom he was. "Madam," answered he, "this is a poor deaf and dumb man, who came hither the other day to ask an alms. So I took him in out of charity, and have made him do sundry things of which we had need. If he knew how to till the hortyard, and chose to abide with us, I believe we should get good service of him. For that we lack such an one, and he is strong, and we could make what we would of him, more by token that you would have no occasion to fear his playing the fool with yonder lasses of yours." "I' faith," rejoined the abbess, "thou say'st sooth. Learn if he knoweth how to till and study to keep him here. Give him a pair of shoes and some old hood or other, and make much of him, caress him, give him plenty to eat." Which the bailiff promised to do. Masetto was not so far distant, but he heard all this, making a show the while of sweeping the courtyard, and said merrily in himself, "An you put me therein, I will till you your hortyard as it was never tilled yet." Accordingly the bailiff, seeing that he knew right well how to work, asked him by signs if he had a mind to abide there, and he replied on like wise that he would do whatsoever he wished. Whereupon the bailiff engaged him, and charged him till the hortyard, showing him what he was to do. After which he went about other business of the convent, and left him. Presently, as Masetto went working one day after another, the nuns fell to plaguing him and making mock of him, as ofttimes it bettedeth that folk do with mutes, and bespoke him the naughtiest words in the world, thinking he understood them not, whereof the abbess, mayhap supposing him to be tailless, as well as toneless, recked little or nothing. It chanced one day, however, that, as he rested himself after a hard morning's work, 2 young nuns, who went about the garden, drew near the place where he lay and fell to looking upon him, whilst he made a show of sleeping. Presently quoth one who was somewhat the bolder of the twain to the other, "If I thought thou wouldst keep my counsel, I would tell thee a thought which I have once and again had, and which might perchance profit thee also." "Speak in all assurance," answered the other, "for certes I will never tell it to any." Then said the forward wench, "I know not if thou have ever considered how straitly we are kept, and how no man dare ever enter here, save the bailiff, who is old, and yonder dumb fellow. And I have again and again heard ladies, who come to visit us, say that all other delights in the world are but toys in comparison with that which a woman enjoyeth, weeners she hath to do with a man. Wherefore I have often had it in mind to make trial with this mute, since with others I may not, if it be so. And indeed he is the best in the world to that end, for that, e'en if he would, he could not nor might tell it again. Thou seest he is a poor silly lout of a lad, who hath overgrown his wit, and I would fain hear how thou deemest of the thing." "Alack," rejoined the other, "what is this thou sayest? Knowest thou not that we have promised our virginity to God?" "Oh, as for that," answered the first, "how many things are promised him all day long, whereof not one is fulfilled unto him. And we have promised it him, let him find himself another or others to perform it to him. Or if, went on her fellow, we should prove with child, how would it go then?" Quoth the other, "Thou beginnest to take thought unto ill ere it cometh. When that bettedeth, then will we look to it. There will be 1,000 ways for us of doing so that it shall never be known, provided we ourselves tell it not." The other, hearing this, and having now a greater itch than her companion, to prove what manner beast a man was, said, "Well then, how shall we do?" Quoth the first, "Thou seest it is nigh upon none, and methinketh the sisters are all asleep, save only ourselves. Let us look about the hortyard if there be any there, and if there be none, what have we to do but to take him by the hand and carry him into yonder hut, whereas he harboureth against the rain, and there let one of us abide with him, whilst the other keepeth watch. He is so simple that he will do whatever we will." Masetto heard all this talk, and disposed to compliance, waited but to be taken by one of the nuns. The latter, having looked well all about and satisfied themselves that they could be seen from nowhere, she who had broached the matter came up to Masetto and aroused him, whereupon he rose incontinent to his feet. The nun took him coaxingly by the hand and led him, grinning like an idiot, to the hut, where, without overmuch pressing, he did what she would. Then, like a loyal comrade, having had her will, she gave place to her fellow, and Masetto, still feigning himself a simpleton, did their pleasure. Before they departed thence, each of the girls must needs once more prove how the mute can horse it, and after devising with each other, they agreed that the thing was as delectable as they had heard, nay, more so. Accordingly, watching their opportunity, they went oftentimes at fitting seasons to divert themselves with the mute, till one day it chanced that one of their sisters, espying them in the act from the lattice of her cell, showed it to other twain. At first they talked of denouncing the culprits to the abbess, but after, changing counsel, and coming to an accord with the first two, they became sharers with them in Masetto's services, and to them the other 3 nuns were at divers times and by divers chances added as associates. Ultimately the abbess, who had not yet gotten wind of these doings, walking one day alone in the garden, the heat being great, found Masetto, who had enough of a little fatigue by day, because of overmuch posting it by night, stretched out asleep under the shade of an almond tree, and the wind lifting the forepart of his clothes, all abode discovered. The lady, beholding this and seeing herself alone, fell into that same appetite which had gotten hold of her nuns, and arousing Masetto, carried him to her chamber, where, to the no small miscontent of the others, who complained loudly that the gardener came not to till the courtyard, she kept him several days, proving and reproving that delight which she had erst been wont to blame in others. At last she sent him back to his own lodging, but was fain to have him often again, and as moreover she required of him more than her share, Masetto, unable to satisfy so many, bethought himself that his playing the mute might, and it endured longer, result in his exceeding great hurt. Wherefore, being one night with the abbess, he gave loose to his tongue and bespoke her thus: "Madam, I have heard say that one rooster sufficeth unto 60 hens, but that 60 men can ill or hardly satisfy one woman, whereas needs must I serve 9, and to this I can no wise endure. Nay, for that which I have done up to now, I am come to such a pass that I can do neither little nor much. Wherefore do ye either let me go in God's name, or find a remedy for the matter." The abbess, hearing him speak, whom she held dumb, was all amazed, and said, "What is this? Methought thou wast dumb." "Madam," answered Masetto, "I was indeed dumb, not by nature, but by reason of a malady which bereft me of speech, and only this very night, for the first time do I feel it restored to me, wherefore I praise God, as most I may." The lady believed this, and asked him what he meant by saying that he had to serve 9. Masetto told her how the case stood, whereby she perceived that she had no nun that was far wiser than herself, but, like a discreet woman as she was, she resolved to take counsel with her nuns to find some means of arranging the matter, without letting Masetto go, so the convent might not be defamed by him. Accordingly, having openly confessed to one another that which had been secretly done of each, they all of one accord, with Masetto's consent, so ordered it that the people round about believed speech to have been restored to him, after he had long been mute, through their prayers, and by the merits of the saint in whose name the convent was intituled, and their bailiff being lately dead, they made Masetto bailiff in his stead, and apportioned his toils on such wise that he could endure them. Thereafter, albeit he began upon them monikins galore, The thing was so discreetly ordered that nothing took vent thereof till after the death of the abbess, when Masetto began to grow old and had a mind to return home rich. The thing becoming known enabled him lightly to accomplish his desire, and thus Masetto, having by his foresight contrived to employ his youth to good purpose, returned in his old age, rich and a father, without being at the pains or expense of rearing children, to the place whence he had set out with an axe about his neck, avouching that thus did Christ entreat whoso set horns to his cap.